Hello YouTube, welcome to the Pursuing Your Points YouTube channel. My name is Peter and today I am going to cover a topic that I receive questions about both in person and online more than almost anything else. And I say almost because what credit card should I sign up for is what people ask me the most. But today we are going to talk about should you ever cancel a credit card? Or more specifically, is canceling a credit card bad for your credit score? Before we get into all that, if you liked the video, it would mean a lot to me if you'd hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It, of course, really helps it out. All right, so you have this card that you're thinking about canceling, but you also have this voice in the back of your head, right? And this could be a teacher or a family member or a friend or whomever, and that voice is telling you that if you cancel this card, it's going to adversely impact your credit score. So the question is, and the goal of today's video is to try to dispel some of the myths around canceling your credit card. Right? Here's the deal. Canceling a credit card can have an impact on your credit score. But be careful there, because I didn't say it could have a negative impact or a positive. I just said an impact. And depending on all of the various factors that go into deriving your score, that will determine whether or not it's going to go up or down after you cancel. And for some of you, if you have very established credit histories, chances are it's not going to make a difference at all. So before we can talk about whether or not this is going to be positive or negative, we really need to understand a little bit about how your credit score is derived. So your credit score is calculated based on a number of factors. The biggest being payment history, which accounts for approximately 35% of your score. This is simply a function of how many payments you've made on time. The next biggest piece is the amount owed, or credit utilization, which is what I'll refer to it as throughout the remainder of the video. And this makes up 30% of your overall score. This is a function of how much money you currently owe relative to how much credit you have available. So let's say that across all of your various credit cards, you have $50,000 in available credit. If you then owe $2,500, your utilization is 5%, right? 2,500 divided by 50,000 times 100, 5%. Now, generally speaking, you want to try to keep that number as low as possible. I try to keep mine below 10%, but you can get it all the way up to 29% or less, 30% or less, and you're going to be okay. The next factor is the length of your credit history. So this is a function of the age of each of your accounts divided by the total number of accounts that you have, right? It's your average age. So if you have one account that's 1 year old, and you have one account that's 5 years old, and you have one account that's 4 years old, and then finally another that's 2 years old, right? Your total age is going to be 12 years. Your average then is 12 divided by 4, which in this case would be 3 years. In this case, the length of history, you want as high a number as possible. And truthfully, this is one of the hardest things for me because, although I have my oldest card is about over 10 years old now, every time you sign up for a new card, it pulls the number down, right? Because all of a sudden you have this 10-year-old card in your portfolio, and then you just added something that's now 1 month old, right? So it's going to drag down that average. And of course, over time, these effects will disappear, right, as you continue to build up a stronger credit portfolio. But especially early on, this average age is going to be very susceptible to going down when you sign up for new products. So just keep that in mind. And then the other two items are types of credit, which is, do you have car loans and mortgages and student loans, etc., or do you just have credit cards? And finally, new credit, right? So every time you apply for a line of credit, whether it's a credit card or a loan or whatever, a hard inquiry is placed on your credit report, right? And a hard inquiry is a way of the bank telling the credit reporting agency that you applied for new credit, right? So in other words, if you sign up for a credit card today, that's one hard inquiry. That will completely fall off your report after about 2 years, but its effects will kind of fade after, say, 6 months. As is the case for all of this stuff, creditkarma.com, and I'll mention this again later, is the best resource for you to look at your credit score, see all of these different factors and how they're affecting you personally. So if you don't have an account, it is free. I would recommend that you sign up because it's a great way to keep an eye on your overall financial well-being, if you will. So let's kind of go through each of these individually and ask ourselves whether or not there will be a positive or a negative or a neutral impact on our credit score after we cancel a card for this particular factor. So the first one that we'll talk about is new credit. So like I said, new credit is simply a function of one new hard inquiry and then the number goes up. And the goal is to get the number as low as possible. So here's the deal. When you sign up for a new credit card, you get a hard inquiry. When you cancel it, that hard inquiry doesn't go away, right? So even if you applied for the card on a Monday and then for whatever reason you canceled it on a Friday, that hard inquiry is going to stay there for 2 years no matter what. So in this case, canceling a card is not going to have a positive impact on this new credit line, but it's also not going to have a negative impact, right? There's no way to make that number go higher other than sign up for new cards, and there's no way to make that number go lower except for waiting. So now we'll talk about types of credit. So unless the credit card you're canceling is the only card you have in your wallet, canceling it will have a neutral impact on types of credit. Because as long as it's not your only credit card, you're still going to have at least one credit card, which means you'll still have that type, if you will. And then mortgages and student loans and all that stuff, none of that's changing. Right? So we can't improve this in any way by canceling, but we also can't adversely affect it, again, unless it's your only card. And if you're canceling your only credit card, it's probably a mistake for a number of reasons. This being one of them, average age being another one, utilization being another one, and just the fact that you need to use credit if you want to have a credit score. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is your length of credit history, and this is where we can actually start to see some either positive or negative impacts from canceling one of your cards. Right, here's the deal. If your average age is 3 years, then every card you have which is greater than 3 years old, canceling it will adversely impact your credit score. The flip side to this, of course, is that every card you have that's less than 3 years old, canceling it can actually increase your score. And I say can because we need to get to one more thing, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but just understand the way that the averaging works, right? If your average age is 3 years old and you cancel a card that's 6 months old, that 6 months was pulling down that 3-year average. So by canceling it, we can actually unlock it and maybe go a little bit higher. Bottom line, look at how old this card is that you're considering canceling. See if it's older or younger than your average age. If it's younger, you shouldn't have any concerns with canceling from an average age perspective. If it's older, you're going to want to think about it a little bit. All right, so the last one and sort of the biggest one, I think the most important one, is amounts owed or credit utilization. So previously, I had said that, in this hypothetical situation, right, we have 4 cards, we have $50,000 in available credit. We'll go ahead and say that card number 1 has a $25,000 credit limit. Card number 2 has a $15,000 credit limit, and cards 3 and 4 both have a $5,000 credit limit. This number, again, as I said, we want this number to be low. I try to keep mine below 10%. You want to try and keep yours below 10% if you can, but up to, again, 29% thereabouts, at least that's what Credit Karma suggests, is going to be okay. Now, let's say we cancel one of these cards. Let's go through each one. If we cancel one of the $5,000 cards, we go from $50,000 in available credit down to $45,000. If we maintain the same amount owed, our utilization will go from 5% up to 5.5%. So basically no change, and if this is the sort of situation that you're in, and you've already run through the average age calculation in your head, feel free to cancel, right? This is basically going to have no impact on your credit score. So what happens if we cancel the $10,000 card? Well, again, 50,000 minus 10 gives us 40,000 available credit. We owe 2,500, so now we're just over 6%. So a bigger gain to be sure, but still not necessarily enough for us to really care. So finally, what happens if we cancel our $25,000 card? Well, it's pretty simple, right? 50 minus 25 is 25. So we now have $25,000 in available credit, and our amount owed hasn't changed, but now our utilization has doubled, right? We went from 5% all the way up to 10%. Now, as I said, I try to keep the number below 10%. If this happens to you, you go from 5 to 10, I would say your score will drop somewhat, right? And then those effects can fade over time as you pay off the balance. But certainly in the short term, I would expect your score to go down. Now, the thing to remember is that because I chose such small numbers to begin with, right, you only owe 2,500, really none of these cancellations could have adversely affected our score in a major way. But in your case, let's say you're at a 15% utilization and you double that up to 30. Now you have a problem, right? Like now your score is going to drop more than just a couple points. Now it could drop 20 or 30 points. Who knows? The overarching theme, right, the thing I want you to leave this video with is the sort of cancellation checklist, if you will. Ask yourself, how will canceling this card affect my utilization? Meaning, what is the credit limit available on this card? Once that credit limit is gone from the equation, what will my new utilization be? And again, creditkarma.com, I'll have a link in the show notes, is a great resource, right? It lays out all this information for you. So I highly suggest that you sign up for an account just so you can see a lot of what I'm talking about. So the second thing on the cancellation checklist is how old is the card that I'm trying to cancel, and is it newer or younger than my average age? If it's younger, it's going to help you, and if it's older, it can hurt you. So those are the two primary factors. Once you've answered the question about average age, and once you've answered the question about utilization, you will know whether or not it will adversely or positively affect you from a credit score perspective. Now, there's more to just deciding whether or not to cancel a card than whether or not it's going to impact your credit score. You really have to ask yourself, from a value perspective, what value are you deriving from this product, right? Is it a daily driver for you, right? Are you using it every day to spend money, or every week or month, what have you? Is it a recurring benefit value? Meaning, do you get a free hotel night, or does it provide lounge access or something like that? Or is it just dead weight, right? If canceling it won't have a negative impact on your credit score, if you don't get any daily value, and if you don't get any recurring value, right, year over year, why would you keep it in your wallet, right? At that point in time, it's nothing more than a security risk, right? If you lose the card or someone steals it, now you have to go through this whole process of trying to make yourself whole again, and for what, right? You just kept it in your wallet because at one point you heard that canceling a card is bad for you. Hopefully I was able to dispel a lot of those myths today. If you still have questions or you still have concerns, you can either leave a comment, you can reach out to me on Twitter, you can email me, peter@pursuingpoints.com. And I will do my best to help you with whatever your situation is that you're facing. But that's all for today's video. Like I said, it means the world to me if you'd subscribe, hit the like button, and let me know what sort of content that you're interested in the future. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.